I am Faith Njeringure. Welcome to our today's lecture, Government Affairs, CJL 1305. Glad to have you today. In our lecture, we'll do the introduction. We'll try to understand what is a state and what is a society. We also look at the government and different arms of the government and the components of the state as well as the society, and try to look at some of the differences that are there. But to begin with, we'll do the introduction, and in our introduction we'll try to look at what is a society and what is a state. And the society consists of a large number of individuals, families, groups, and institutions. And you find that the early political thinkers considered both state and society as one. And you find that state is a part of society, but is not a form of society. These are different thinkers who tried to bring out some definitions and also some differences. And you find that we view state to be the same as society, but you find that the different scholars try to demarcate, and for them they found that state is part of the society, and therefore we can't say that state is the same as society. And a society consists of different families and also a large number of individuals, the groups that are there in a state, and also the institutions that are there. And therefore, we cannot say that state and society are the same. Now to proceed, we'll look at the differences, and you find that, as we have said, state is part of the society, and there are some differences that we can use to demarcate the differences that are there. You find that state came into existence after the origin of the society, and therefore the state is as a result of the society. The society came in before the state, and that's why we are saying that state came into existence after the origin of the society. Another difference is the scope of the state is limited, while that of the society is much wider. The scope, the level of a state, or the scope of the state, you find that it's limited, but with the society it's wider. It has a wider scope because it touches on the large number of individuals, it touches on the families, it touches on the institution, and therefore it has a wider scope. And state has a fixed territory, while society has none. You find that a state has a fixed territory. There is a territory that is used to determine a state or to fix a state, but with the society there is not that territory. A society has a wider scope, not as a state. We can say the Kenyan state, but when we are mentioning of the society, we look at the broader perspective. State is a political organization, while society is a social organization. Even when we are discussing or when we are mentioning the state, we usually try to connect it to the politics that are there in a given country, or even the political situations and issues that are in a given organization. And therefore, a state is a political organization, while a society is a social organization. We use the social elements to define what is a society, and also to talk more about society. Another difference, the state has power to enforce laws, while society has none. And this is true. You find even in a Kenyan context, you find that a state can enforce law. They have that power to come up with rules and regulations, even to come up with a constitution. And you find that different bodies and arms of government are involved when it comes to coming up with laws or making laws, and also ensuring that these laws are followed to the letter. And a scholar known as Professor Ernest Baka, in his book entitled Principles of Social and Political Theory, clearly brings out the difference between state and society under three headings. And these headings are: number one, there is the purpose or the function, organization and structure, and the third element that Professor Baka used is the method. And we'll try to look at each and see how the differences comes in. Now to the purpose. According to him, the membership of the state and society are the same, and that's true. The membership of the state and the society are the same. But you find that the state exists for one great but single purpose. Society exists for a number of purposes, some great and some small, but all in their aggregate, deep as well as broad. According to Professor Baka, to him, you find that he said, or he deduced that state exists for one great purpose, but the society has different purposes that are based on the social organizations or that are based on a given society. And you may find a society have some purposes that are big and some that are small, but a state exists for one great purpose. The other difference can be seen in terms of the organization and structure. And the state is a single organization, legal, whereas society comprises within itself many organizations. And that's true. You find that a state is a single organization and touching more of legal. It's a legal organization. But for the society has several organizations that may touch on institutions, that may touch on families, that may touch on large group of people. And that's why we are saying that they are different organizations, because they are founded based on the societal organizations. Now to the other difference, you find that it touches on the method. And as per the method, you find that the state employs the method of coercion or compulsion, while society employs method of voluntary action. And this is true. Even in our society, whatever we are required to do, we do it voluntarily. But when it comes to the state, even touching on the issues of curfew, if you don't really obey these regulations and measures that are there, you find that there is a lot of coercion and compulsion. It's a compulsory thing. You must be in the house by 9. But for the societal things, even if there is an event or even if there is something taking place in the society, you can voluntarily attend or even voluntarily give your time or voluntarily even give your energy. And that's why we are saying, even in terms of how measures and regulations are put in place when it comes to the state and also to the society, you find that the state tend to use a lot of coercion, and whatever people are expected to do, you find it's a compulsory thing. But with the society, you have that permission, or you have permission, or even you can choose what to do and not to do. And that's why we are saying it's more of voluntarily action in terms of the method. Now to proceed we'll look at the difference between the state and the nation. Different scholars have tried to bring in the differences between a state and a nation. And the word nation is derived from the Latin word natio, which means birth or race. And according to Leacock, a nation is a body of people united by common descent and language. Therefore, a nation is just a body of people that are united by common descent and language. Like we can say we are the nation of Kenya because we are united by common descent and also their language. And to proceed, we will look at also what other writers have said, but you will find that the modern writers do not emphasize on the racial aspects so much as the psychological and spiritual. It has acquired a political meaning in the recent times. As much as different scholars like Leacock have defined nation based on the common decency and also language, you find in the recent, especially the 21st century, and even in these contemporary ages. You find that when we are defining a nation, we try to define it based on the political aspirations or the political aspects, but not more based on the religion or spiritual matters, and not based on the common decency and language. And we will look at some of the differences that are there between a nation and a state. And difference number one, you find that state existed not only at the present, but also in the ancient period, where nation is a modern phenomenon. Looking at what other writers and scholars have said about a nation and also a state, they have said that a nation is defined or is founded on the political elements, and therefore the political elements of a given country are used to define what a nation is, or to define nations. But you find that a state existed way before in the ancient times, but by the virtue that nations are being defined based on the political phenomenon, that's why different scholars have tried to bring out the difference based on the existence. There is also another difference. State is legal, political, while nation is ratio, cultural. And that's true. A state is based on the legal issues and also political issues, but a nation is mostly defined based on the racial and cultural issues. People organized for law within a definite territory. People psychologically joined together with a common will to live together. And we'll proceed to another difference. A state must be sovereign, while people continue as a nation even if they do not remain sovereign. You find that a state must be sovereign and people must continue as a nation even if they don't remain sovereign. Also, another difference, state they are inhabited by heterogeneous groups of people, while nation is homogeneous groups of people. And also there are other differences. Since the Second World War, that is 1939 to 1945, the theory of one nation, one state has become a practical politics, with all nations and new nation states have been created after the Second World War. Also, if a nation with a self-government becomes independent, a nation-state comes in existence. Now we'll look at the difference between the state and the government. And the government is often used with the state as a synonym, but both the government and the state are two different entities, and we will look at the differences. You find that state consists of population, territory, government, and sovereignty, while government is part of state. Therefore, a state is an umbrella, and a government comes in and falls in the state. State tend to possess original powers, while powers of the government originate from the state. And that's true. The powers of the government tend to originate from state. And state is permanent and continues forever, while government is temporary. Government is temporary. It's something that can keep on changing, but state is permanent and continues forever. State is something that is abstract and invisible, and you find that government is something that is concrete and visible. And that's why we end up saying during the era of President Uhuru, the government had these and these milestones. So during the government, the period, the regime of a given president, the government had several milestones, because government is something that is visible and something that we can really even analyze based on the milestone and the activities that takes place in a given regime. Also, in terms of elements of state, you find that there are different elements of state, and number one is population. And population touches on the community the community or people within a given territory. And that's why we are saying state is a community of persons. It is a human political institution. Without a population, there can be no state. Even in a state like Kenya, you find that we tend to define a state based on the people that are living in a given state. For example, we have a population that is made of 47 is made of several tribes within the 47 counties. Population can be more or less, but it has to be there. And that's true. A state can have a population that is of few people or even is of more people. And therefore, you find the community of the people living in a given place are used to define or even are used as an element of a state. And the people living in the state are the citizens of the state. We are the citizens of this country. We are the citizens of this state because we are living in this state. That's why we end up saying the Kenyan state, or we end up mentioning Kenya. We end up mentioning or even categorizing ourselves as a Kenyan citizen because we are living in Kenya. And we're saying that people living in the state are the citizens of the state. They enjoy rights and freedom as citizens, as well as perform several duties towards the state. That's true. We are the Kenyan citizens. There are rights and freedoms that we have that are founded on the Constitution. There is a right of the freedom of movement, the freedom of expression. And in terms of duties, we have an obligation as the citizens of Kenya as far as taxation is concerned, as far as obeying the rules and the regulations that are there, and also obeying the Constitution. And that's why we are saying that the citizens of a given state tend to enjoy the freedom. Apart from the freedom, they tend to enjoy the rights that are there. And we as the Kenyan citizens, we enjoy these rights and freedoms that are there, and they are founded on our Constitution. And also we have several duties that we are expected to follow, or even duties that we are expected to perform, and we do perform them, like taxation or being taxed. Also, there is the other element of a state, and this is the territory. And you find that state is a territorial unit, and a state cannot exist in the air or a sea. That's why we are saying that a state exists on a territorial unit. We can use a territory to define what is a state. There is the Kenyan territory, the Ugandan territory, the Tanzanian territory, and you find that the size of the territory of a state can be big or small. Nevertheless, it has to be a definite, well-marked portion of territory. And that's why there are borders: the Kenyan border, the Ugandan border, the Rwandan, the border at Rwanda. And that we are saying that there is a portion based on the territory, and we can use a territory to define what is a state, and there is even a demarcation, and we are able to tell that the Kenyan, the kilometers of a given state, or how big or how small, because it is well marked in terms of the portion. That's why we're able to tell at a given point, this is the Kenyan border, this is a border that leads to a given country. And based on their territory, all the persons, citizens as well as the aliens living in the territory of the state are duty bound to obey the state laws and the policies. And that's true. If you are in the Kenyan territory, and maybe you're not a resident of that country, or you're not a citizen of that country, you have an obligation to obey the laws that are there and also the policies that are there. If I move from this place to another country like Tanzania, that's another territory, and you find that I'm supposed even to obey the laws and the policies that are there. Also, the state exercises supreme authority over them through its government. And that's true. The state tends to exercise supreme authority to their citizens and also based on the territory through its government, and it's the government that is used to exercise their authority. If someone moves from Uganda to this country and they are expected to obey the laws and also the policies that are there, you find that if they disobey the law, they are trying to disobey one of the arms of the government, or they are going against the constitution of the country, because you find that the exercising of the laws and also ensuring that the laws are followed, you find that different arms of government are supposed even to oversee how citizens are behaving in terms of the laws and the rules and the regulations that are there in a given territory. The whole territory of the state is under the sovereignty or supreme powers of the state. All persons, organizations, associations, institutions, and places located within its territory are under the sovereign jurisdiction of the state. And that's true. We'll also proceed with another point. Territory of the state includes not only the land, but also the rivers, the lakes, the canals, the canals, islands, seas, if any, a portion of the coastal sea. And you find even in our country, we use even the lakes and the seas and also the islands to define even the Kenyan territory. Like the coastal region, the ocean, we are able to say that maybe the ocean is in the country. Lakes like Lake Naivasha is in the country. We use even lakes and rivers when we are defining the territory. We are able to tell that River Chania is in Kenya, because also rivers, lakes, canals, mountains, coastal sea tends to fall under the territory. Also, to proceed to the other element of our territory, it's the government. And you find a government, it's just an organization. It's just an organization or a machinery or an agency or magistracy of the state which makes, implements, enforces, and also adjudicates the laws of the state. Therefore, a government is just an organization that tends to come up with, to implement laws through different arms of the government, enforces the laws, and also adjudicates the laws of a state. And the state exercises its sovereign power through its government. It's the government that exercises the sovereign power on behalf of the state. The government is the agent or the working agency of the state, and that's true. And you find that sovereignty belongs to the state. The government only uses its sovereignty on behalf of the state. Therefore, the sovereignty belongs to the state, but the government only uses it on behalf of the state. Now, to proceed, we'll look at different arms of the government. And at this point, we are looking at the Kenyan government, the organs or the arms of the government. And there are different arms of the government that we are going to discuss. And the first arm of the government is the legislature. And with the legislature, it's an arm of the government that formulates the will of the state. They formulate the will of the state. They formulate law, i.e. performs law-making functions. And a good example in our Kenyan country, we have the members of parliament who comes up with laws, who comes up with bills that are used even to come up with different laws. And we have different members of the MPs or the members of parliament in our country that have been elected by the voters in each and every constituency. We also have the other arm of the government, and that is the executive, and the executive enforces and implements the laws. That is, performs the law application function. And in our an example of the country like Kenya, you find that in the executive we have the president, the deputy president, different cabinet secretaries who oversees different ministries. And you find for them they enforces and implements the laws such that they performs the law application function. And the other body or the other organ or the arm of the government is the judiciary, and the judiciary applies the law to specific cases and settles the dispute, performs adjudication functions. And in our country, Kenya, we have courts, and you find that the judiciary body is, or the adjudication function, the court tends to oversee the adjudication functions, and we have different courts that you find that the overseers of these courts are the judges, and also the president who oversees the Supreme Court. And you find the government as a whole is the instrument through which the sovereign power of the state gets used. It's through the government that the power or the sovereign power of a state is used. Now to proceed to the other element of the state is sovereignty, and we have been mentioning sovereignty, or I've been mentioning sovereignty all through, and now we can try and understand what sovereignty means. And sovereignty is the most exclusive element of the state, and you find that state alone possesses sovereignty, and without sovereignty no state can exist. And sovereignty is the basic on which the state regulates all aspects of the life of the people living in the territory. Therefore, sovereignty is how the state tends to regulate all the aspects of the people living in a given territory, the power that the state uses to regulate the different aspects of people who are living in a given state. And to continue, you find that as the supreme power of the state, sovereignty has two dimensions. There is the internal sovereignty and also the external sovereignty. And internal sovereignty, it means the power of the state to order, regulate the activities of all the people, groups, and institutions which are at work within its territory. And therefore, these are power, or these are regulation of people, and also the activities of people is at work within the territory. Internal sovereignty, when the regulation takes place within the territory, within the Kenyan territory, the people are regulated, the people who are within are regulated by the state, and that is internal sovereignty. There is also the external sovereignty, and with external sovereignty, it means complete independence of the state from external control. And it also means the full freedom of the state to participate in the activities of the community of nations. And therefore, this is the external sovereignty, where a state has independence of participating in different activities outside the territory. And you find that state voluntarily accepts rules of international law, and also these cannot be forced upon the state. There are rules that are taken in by a given state for the purposes of normal activities, or for the purposes of running a country or even a government smoothly. But you find these international rules or these international laws cannot be forced into a country, not unless they choose to take some some of these laws for the purposes of smooth running of the states. And why have a state? Why should we even have a state? And you find that the state is the natural institution, and therefore it's necessary to have a state. Also, man is a social animal. His nature impels him, and there's that necessity that compels him to live in a society and enter into social relations with others, and therefore a state should exist, or we should have a state. There is also another reason. The state is a social necessity, and you find that when a man lives in a company of others, he naturally develops social relations with other human beings, and also he forms family and several other groups. And that's the reason why we should have a state. You find that a state is a social necessity as far as human beings are concerned. There is that necessity to relate with others, and there is that necessity to form even families and other several groups for the purposes of living, and also for the purposes of smooth running of our activities. Also, there is the economic necessity of the state. You find that there is that economic part that different people have, or even human beings have. There is also state secures peace, security, and welfare of all in the society, and that's also another reason. Also, state is needed for protection against war and also against external enemies, for the purposes of protection, for the purposes of peace, for the purposes of economic stability, and also for the purposes of protection against enemies. That makes one to have that need of being in a state. And therefore, these are just some of the reasons why we should have a state. And you find that as our government exists in a state, and the government comes in to ensure that the social institutions or the social organizations are running well, and also ensuring that the laws are well enforced. And this brings us to the end of our lecture. It was nice having you today. Thank you.
These televised lectures supplement our robust online learning going on our MKU online platform. You can view more on our televised lectures via our online platform. We are in a digital era, and Mount Kenya University knows this. The following are the steps to follow so as to complete your online application. Download the application form from the website www.mku.ac.ke. Attach copies of your academic certificates and ID. Pay the application fees via M-Pesa pay bill number 270988. Your ID is the account number. 2,000 shillings is the charge for a postgraduate. You can also deposit in the bank accounts provided on the website. Then email all the above to apply@mku.ac.ke.